Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're unpacking a really fascinating theoretical framework that essentially serves as a practical blueprint for anyone out there looking to build self-sufficient, horizontal, anarchist-aligned communities. We're going to explore exactly how this text suggests taking autonomy from just this abstract, pie-in-the-sky idea and turning it into a concrete material reality. Right off the bat, this source text tackles a massive fundamental question. How do you build a commune that doesn't secretly rely on the exact systems you're trying to escape? It's a tough one, right? Well, the text outlines a very specific, impartial methodology for decentralizing power. It explores how a community can literally secure its own groceries, its own medicine, and its own electricity without leaning on state or corporate control. Okay, let's dive into this roadmap. First, we'll look at understanding dependency notes. Second, the strategy of displacement. Third, practical examples. Fourth, the threat of creeping hierarchy. And finally, safeguarding your autonomy. Starting with part 1, understanding dependency nodes and really figuring out what ties you to the outside world. The text argues that to even begin building an autonomous commune, you absolutely have to identify the invisible strings that are currently binding you to hierarchical systems. So, the source categorizes our reliance on outside systems into 3 main nodes. First up is survival. This covers your basic, non-negotiable requirements, like relying on massive grocery store supply chains just to eat. Then there's flourishing. This covers psychological and social needs, a sense of belonging and status. And finally, luxury. This includes conveniences that, let's be honest, aren't strictly necessary, but they offer immense comfort. Think next-day shipping or instant streaming. Now here's where it gets really interesting. The text points out that when hierarchical institutions control these critical life nodes, like urban landlords controlling your shelter or conglomerates controlling your healthcare, obedience just becomes a totally rational strategy. I mean, you comply to survive and stay comfortable. So to actually break free, a commune has to completely change that math. That brings us to part 2, the strategy of displacement, or how we actually go about cutting those ties. The text outlines shifting the heavy weight of a community's needs squarely onto new, localized pillars. The framework introduces this concept of dependency displacement, and it's not just a moral appeal. It literally means transferring your material reliance away from elite centralized control and putting it straight into your own local institutions. You are displacing your reliance on the state or massive corporations and replacing it with a reliance on each other. It's about taking the power back, structurally. Moving into part 3, practical examples for communes. Let's turn this theory into practice. The text provides some really solid, functioning prototypes for how to implement this shift on a grassroots level. So instead of relying on fragile global supply chains for your food, the framework points to community-supported agriculture and shared neighborhood seed banks. And instead of trying to fight entirely rigged, speculative real estate markets, it suggests placing land directly into a community land trust. The land is held as a commons for long-term social use, shifting that crucial survival node entirely under local control. The text also brilliantly contrasts traditional crisis response with reciprocal mutual aid networks. Think about it. When someone faces an unexpected crisis, rather than having to navigate cold, bureaucratic welfare systems or begging insurance monopolies for help, the community directly absorbs that shock together through pure solidarity. It's a total game changer. On the ground, this redistributed dependency actually looks like neighborhood healthcare co-ops. It looks like shared childcare pools where parents are distributing the heavy load. It's localized tool libraries where equipment is just shared freely. According to the text, these aren't just utopian ideas. They are highly actionable ways to yank your material foundations away from centralized control. But we need to talk about part 4, the threat of creeping hierarchy. This is the internal danger. The text gives a massive warning about successfully breaking away from the state, only to accidentally invent a brand new boss right inside your autonomous commune. The source highlights a profound truth here, and I want to emphasize this. Yesterday's delegates can become tomorrow's managers. It argues that even in emancipatory, radically horizontal spaces, power has this really persistent, almost gravitational tendency to reconcentrate. If someone steps up to manage a task temporarily and is just left unchecked, well, they can become the new boss. And the framework stresses that this danger isn't always about official titles or putting on a uniform. Hierarchy often sneaks in informally through prestige, expertise, or just raw charismatic influence. Think about that one person in your commune who knows exactly how the local solar power grid works. Without anyone really realizing it, everyone might start deferring to them for everything, and suddenly, boom, an informal hierarchy is formed. So how do we fix that? That leads to part 5, safeguarding your autonomy, protecting the commune. The text prescribes a kind of built-in security system to ensure power stays perfectly horizontal. To prevent that institutional stagnation and careerism, the text outlines some hardcore structural countermeasures. This means mandatory rotation of responsibilities. Everyone takes a turn doing the fun jobs and the really dirty jobs. It means ensuring any delegates are instantly recallable, enforcing absolute transparency to stop people from hoarding information, and strictly coordinating with other communes through horizontal federation, definitely not a chain of command. Now, regarding that person who knows absolutely everything about the solar panels, the text has specific steps for defeating that kind of informal hierarchy. First, you have to share expertise through mandatory mentorship and cross-training. Knowledge cannot be hoarded. Second, actively invite incredibly broad participatory involvement. Make sure the quietest voices in the room are heard just as much as the super charismatic ones. The goal isn't to pretend that everyone possesses the exact same skills, but to ensure that those natural differences in skill never ever crystallize into unequal rank. Bringing this whole shebang together, the text summarizes its core thesis. Dependency displacement is a comprehensive strategy of structural transformation. Cultivating durable, lasting practices of freedom requires moving our reliance to local assemblies and then fiercely, relentlessly protecting those assemblies with extremely tight anti-hierarchy measures. As you go out and explore these concepts in your own organizing, the text leaves us with one seriously provocative question. Is your community truly displacing dependency, or are you just changing who manages it? Answering that honestly is absolutely crucial to building real liberation. Thanks so much for joining me for this explainer, and I'll catch you next time.